friends, it's Valerie. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to this week's What's for Dinner. If you're new here, welcome. I would love if you would hit that subscribe button and join my YouTube family. I put out What's for Dinner videos every Sunday, and this week I have 3 inspirational meals for you again, and I hope that you enjoy them as much as we did. And other than that, let's just get started. This first meal is Ritz everything flavored chicken and lemon Dijon roasted potatoes and broccoli. I'm going to start off by cutting up some potatoes. The recipe calls for 4 cups of red potatoes. I had a lot of russet potatoes to use up, so I'm just going to be subbing that type of potato for it. And I'm cutting it into some pretty small sized pieces. In the end, I could have had these a little bit bigger and it would have been fine. Sometimes I just worry about putting multiple things in the oven at the same time with potatoes, because if the potatoes are too largely cut, then you still end up with everything cooked and your potatoes still not as soft as I prefer. So I cut them smaller, and that kind of helps out with that. Now in a measuring cup, I'm going to be combining all the ingredients for the lemon Dijon sauce, and that is going to be 1/4 cup of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, a tablespoon of chopped green onions, 1 teaspoon of sugar, half a teaspoon of minced garlic, and 1/8 teaspoon salt, and 1/8 teaspoon of pepper. And then just go ahead and mix that all together to combine it. Next, you're going to go ahead and toss your potatoes with 2/3 of the mustard mixture. You can do it in a Ziploc bag or just in a bowl like I'm doing here. The recipe calls for sprinkling your baking sheet with Parmesan cheese and then placing your potatoes on top. I actually omitted the Parmesan cheese because I was all out. So you're just going to put the potatoes on your baking sheet. I lined mine with foil, and you're only going to do half the sheet so that your broccoli can later go on to the other half, and you're going to bake these at 400 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. And next, I'm taking this Ritz everything seasoning, and I'm going to coat my chicken with this. And I'm just taking a 1/4 cup's worth right now, and I'm putting in the bottom of this shallow little dish here. I was trying not to waste too much of the seasoning if I didn't need to, because I was only going to be making 2 chicken breasts. So I'm spraying a small baking dish here with some oil, and I'm actually going to add some extra seasonings in to that Ritz mix. So I'm adding some garlic herb seasoning, some chicken seasoning, and some garlic powder. And I'm just going to go ahead and shake that all around just to kind of mix it. And I'm going to go ahead and just press my chicken breast into that mixture. And I've patted them dry with a paper towel already to remove any excess moisture. And I'm just going to do my best to try to get them coated. Like I said, I have more of the mixture, but I'm trying not to waste it because I kind of want to save half the package to use again if I can. If I really need it, then I'll go ahead and do that. But I'm pretty sure that I was going to be fine with 2 chicken breasts, and I was. If you've got more than that, you're going to have to use the whole little packet, depending. I believe it comes in different sizes. The packet I had was not very large. I don't even know the ounces, but I don't think it was more than a 4-ounce package. And so yeah, just gonna do the same thing with my second chicken breast. If you're doing multiples, of course, you're just going to repeat this process with all of your chicken. And with whatever seasoning mix I had left over, I just poured it on top of my chicken breast and kind of patted it down on to them, not to waste all of that, to leave all that nice crunchy texture that you'll get from it cooking on it. And I didn't get it on camera, but I just placed this whole small baking dish in that side with the potatoes where the broccoli is going to go later. So I just put it there since the baking temperature and time were very close to each other. I just placed it right on that baking tray, and I cooked it for like the whole time that the potatoes were cooking. So like they were in there for 25 to 30 minutes. It took me a few extra minutes to get that chicken together. But they were I still left the chicken in there for about 25 to 30 minutes. And now I am cutting my broccoli up. I've just got a large head of broccoli here. I believe the recipe calls for 3 cups of broccoli florets. I didn't really measure. I just kind of used up whatever amount of broccoli that I had on hand here. And I've already washed it, and I'm just trimming off all of those florets. And now I'm just taking the remainder of that mustard mixture and I'm pouring it on top of my broccoli, and I'm just going to go ahead and toss that all to coat it with that sauce. And I'm just setting this aside for a moment because these are going to go in once the potatoes have cooked for 25 to 30 minutes. And I believe I also show you here really quick that I'm also making another side dish with this because I had a box of just like Kraft Blue Box mac and cheese and I needed to use it up, so I thought it'd be a good complement to this meal, so I'm just making that. I'm not going to show it because you all know how to make that. So now the 30 minutes have passed and I went ahead, took the chicken off the pan, and I forgot to show you guys that I added the broccoli on there. I thought I hit record. But yeah, I added the broccoli in, and then the recipe says to bake it for 7 to 10 more minutes. I prefer my broccoli more done than that 7 to 10 more minutes, so I would have preferred to add an additional maybe 5 minutes or so to that time. But it was all really good, and this is all it out of the oven, and those potatoes were delicious. The broccoli really absorbed the flavors of that mustard sauce, so if you don't like mustard, I would tone it down on how much sauce you're putting on the broccoli. On the potatoes, it really absorbed it in a way that like it tasted good. I mean, it all tasted good to me, but you couldn't taste the mustard as much, but with the broccoli, you really could. So yeah, just leave a little less off or add more to just the potatoes if that is your preference, to not have so much of a mustard taste. And there is that mac and cheese and the chicken, and it was so nice and crispy and delicious. You'll see a little spot where it looks mushy, and that is just because when I placed the thermometer inside of the chicken, the juices came out and of course touched all the breaded part and made it look a little bit more soft right there. But we really enjoyed this meal. This next meal is dill salmon fettuccine Alfredo. I'm going to start off by getting my dill ready. So I'm just kind of picking off the dill leaves. I don't know what you call them, but I'm picking them off the stems, trying to keep as many stems off of this as possible. Even though I'm going to be using my knife here to kind of chop them up and make the dill finer and into some smaller pieces so it can adhere to the salmon fillets a little bit better. And the recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of dill. I'm actually going to cut it down because I'm not using the full amount of salmon that they're asking for. They call for 2 pounds of salmon. This was not quite 2 pounds of salmon. I didn't even weigh it. It's just what I had on hand. And I knew that we didn't need more than that because this was just for my boyfriend and I. But I'm going to season that with salt and pepper and add the dill onto it. And of course I'm just doing half here so that you can see, and I'm going to go ahead and press that dill into the salmon fillets a little bit better with a fork here, and I will season the other side once I've got these in the pan. So I have my skillet over a medium heat, and I'm adding a few tablespoons of olive oil to it, and once it's hot I'm just going to go ahead and add in my salmon fillets seasoned side down. And these are skinless, by the way. Of course, you don't have, I mean, you can use whatever you want, but skinless, of course, would be what you're trying to go for, because you want both sides to be seasoned with the salt, pepper, and the fresh dill. So if you have skin on, you can just remove the skins. And yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and season this other side here, and I'm going to cook my salmon for probably maybe about 2 to 3 minutes on each side. Of course, this is going to vary depending how thick your salmon fillets are. These are really thin ones, so 2 to 3 minutes did work for me. You might need the additional minute if you have a very large one. One of mine is thicker, so I didn't flip it immediately. I waited for the other two to kind of be done, and then I flipped it when it was a little bit more done. And now, once it's all cooked, I'm just removing the salmon to a plate. Again, I waited on the larger one. I left it in there a little bit longer, and then I removed it when it was done. And I'm just setting these aside, and I set them in my microwave so that they can retain the heat. And now to that same pan, I'm going to be making an Alfredo sauce. This recipe that I'm using actually does not make an actual Alfredo sauce. They do make a lighter sauce, and I wanted a more creamy sauce, so I'm using a different recipe for this sauce. And for that, I'm going to be adding 4 tablespoons of butter to my pan with 4 cloves of garlic that I've pressed. And I'm just going to go ahead and let that garlic kind of saute in the butter for a few minutes, and then I'm going to go ahead, and this is on low heat by the way, and I'm going to go ahead and add in 1.5 cups of heavy cream, or I believe at this moment it just says to add in only 1 cup at first, so I've just added the 1 cup in right now. And I'm going to go ahead and just you can use a whisk. I'm just using a rubber spatula to kind of just mix that all together, and you're going to increase your heat to medium and let that cook for about 5 minutes, stirring occasionally. I'm also cooking my pasta, so I have a pot of boiling water, and I'm cooking 1/2 pound of fettuccine in there, and it's salted water, and just cooking it to al dente, whatever your package directions say for that. And this is me just stirring that sauce, and I'm adding some more of that fresh dill to this. I thought that'd be a nice flavor to add to it, to keep adding, especially because I had already chopped it. It's just I didn't need as much to cover my salmon because I used less salmon. But in the original recipe's sauce, they did use additional dill, and I thought that sounded really great to add to this. Anyways, now I'm going to go ahead and add in 1.5 cups of Parmesan cheese. And this was nothing great quality Parmesan cheese, but it still worked out perfectly. At this point, I felt like I needed a little bit more cream, and I just added a little. My cream needed to get used up anyways, which is another reason I was making this sauce from scratch. So I just kind of added it in. I eyeballed it, and I also decided to add in a little bit of mozzarella that I had grated up. Again, I wanted this cheesy and creamy. The recipe does not call for this, but I would highly recommend it because it came out delicious. Like, this sauce tasted so good. Yeah, there's me adding in more cream. Again, just eye it, kind of see it if you want a little bit more thinner, or if you don't want it as thin. It came out really perfect for me. Another side dish that I wanted for this was some green beans that I'm going to air fry. You guys have seen me make those plenty of times, but I'm just adding some olive oil, some garlic herb seasoning, some garlic powder, and I'm just going to air fry those at 400 degrees for about 8 to 10 minutes. And someone asked me in one of my last videos about how I make these little garlic rounds. They are nothing fancy. This is a sandwich roll that I need to use up, but I've been loving doing this with these like sandwich rolls, just cutting them into these thin little rounds, and then I just spread a little bit of spreadable butter or margarine on top. And in this case, I'm just using margarine. I put just a thin layer on top of each of the rounds. I'm just going to do a few here so you can kind of see what I do. There's no real science behind this. It's just me spreading some butter, and then I sprinkle a little bit of garlic powder on top of the butter, and I use my knife to kind of like spread it with the butter, like to kind of mix it together, because I have found that when you don't mix it together, I don't know, the garlic powder just doesn't taste as good. Like, when it melds with that butter really well, it just becomes flavorful instead of like dry and kind of nasty. So I'm just topping it with some mozzarella cheese that I grated. You could use a parsley on top for looks. I just do this as a quick and easy thing, and I bake them at 350 degrees for about 6 minutes. Just watch it however toasty you want them. And now I drained my pasta. I reserved a little bit of that pasta water in case I needed it. I didn't want my pasta sticking. And I am adding in the sauce, and I didn't do all of it because I didn't know if it was going to be too much sauce, and I do believe it was too much sauce. I mean, not too much as in I could save it and use it for something else, but for the amount of pasta, I could have probably got away with 3/4 of a pound to maybe even a pound, depending how saucy you like it. If you don't like it on the saucier side, you could have stretched it probably to a pound's worth of pasta. And Now I have my salmon that I'm cutting into some chunks. The original recipe called for chunking the salmon like beforehand while it was raw, and then I just thought that was a lot more work. I just wanted to flip these fillets easily, and then I would just cut them up. I'm not trying to be all fancy. Not making this to impress anyone. I did cut some more neatly for you guys for a picture. And there's those green beans and those toasted rounds out of the oven, and then the pasta, and I put the salmon on top, and it was delicious. This meal was so good. I love salmon in general, but I've never had salmon Alfredo, and I loved it. And I will be making that sauce again, especially with a little bit of added mozzarella, because it was so good. So I hope you guys enjoy that meal. This last meal, I know I'm doing a hack job of saying this, but it's called Gallina Pinta, and it is a hominy and pinto bean soup, and I added chicken to mine. So to the bottom of my pot here, and I'm using a large pot, I'm boiling some water, and I'm boiling about 10 to 12 cups of water in there. I would go with 12. And now I'm taking about 2 cups of dried pinto beans, which is about a pound of pinto beans, and I'm just sorting through them to make sure there's no stones or broken pieces, and I'm kind of just picking them out if I see them. I didn't use exactly two cups. I did go a little bit over because I have a lot of pinto beans right now, and so I was trying to really use those up, and now I've placed some water in them, and I'm going to just shake those around and try to remove any debris and dirt if there's any, and just clean them up. And I'm just using my hand to keep stirring through those, and then I'm just pulling this little sifting bowl out, and I'm left with that water, and I'm setting them aside for a moment, and I'm gonna go ahead and just cut up some onion here. This is just a small onion, and I'm gonna take half of it, and I'm placing those pinto beans into that boiling water with that little piece of onion, as well as a few cloves of garlic and this bouillon cube. I'm just breaking up and putting it into the water. I wanted some additional flavor, and later on I do add more bouillon. This is a kind of a to taste thing, but yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and stir that together, and I have this over medium heat, medium low, around there, and I'm gonna let that simmer with the lid on for about 2 hours. And while that is cooking, I'm just going to go ahead and make a salsa verde, which is a green salsa. You don't have to do this, but this is something I really enjoy with this meal. So I am cleaning up about 8 medium to large size tomatillos. I'm removing the husk and then washing them. That is about a pound and a half's worth of tomatillos, and I brought a pot of water to a boil, and I'm placing them in there with 1 serrano chili pepper. You can use a jalapeno as well. This adds a good flavor. I don't keep the seeds so it's not too hot, and then I'm adding in like a half of a white onion, or a small piece of white onion, and a couple cloves of garlic, and I'm gonna go ahead and let that boil for about 15 minutes. And now I am checking on my beans. If you need any additional liquid, go ahead and add it. You never want your beans to be, or the liquid to be below the beans. So check it sometimes and make sure that you're not losing your liquid too much. Add some additional water or broth. You can add chicken broth. That really makes this flavorful. I am adding some water with bouillon. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and put the lid back on that and let that continue to cook. And now everything is nice and soft, and I'm going to go ahead and remove all those tomatillos to my blender with the onion and the garlic. The chili I'm setting aside, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that in a moment. For the chili, I'm actually going to place a glove on my hand while I work with it, because I've just started doing that when working with chili so that I don't have the oils from the chili seep into my skin and then they burn everything I touch, because I have pets and cats and I have to be careful about that. So yeah, I'm cutting the stem off the serrano chili, and I'm just basically scraping the ribs and the seeds out of the chili because I don't want to use them because I don't like too spicy. If you do, go ahead and add those seeds, girl. It's delicious. And yeah, and now I'm going to go ahead and cut up some cilantro. I'm using even the stems, and I'm using about half a bunch of cilantro, If you like more or less, just go ahead and change that. And I'm also adding the juice from 1 lime. You can also next add some salt, but I'm going to be using some more of that bouillon. So I have 1 more cube, and I'm going to go ahead and add that in. I added half first just to make sure I could taste it along the way and see. And this is it in my blender, and you're going to go ahead and just blend that for a few minutes until it's nice and smooth like a salsa. And make sure to use your venting top like that, or if you don't have that venting corner, go ahead and lift your lid every so often, because with the hot liquid it can crack your blender, and that will be obviously very bad. So yeah, if you vent out the hot air about after a few 30 seconds at first, you should be good. And now my beans are done being cooked. So I'm taking this can of hominy here. This is a way larger can than what I needed, but it's what was in stock, so I just grabbed it. And I will find another use for the hominy because I really love hominy. So I'm gonna take about 3 cups of hominy here. Of course, you can use more or less to your liking. I really love hominy. I could use more, but it was a good ratio, though, the 3 cups with the 2 cups of uncooked pinto beans. So I've just went ahead and added that into my pinto beans. You can remove your garlic if you see them in there. And I'm stirring in some shredded chicken. I thought I got a recording of me cooking a whole chicken in the Instant Pot, but I didn't, so I'll leave a link to me doing that before. And I also added in some chicken broth, and this is just the broth from the bottom of the Instant Pot from me cooking the chicken. And I like my beans and soups like that, very soupy, like lots of liquid. So you can just adjust that, add more bouillon, just taste your liquid and see what you want, more salt, things like that. For me, I just added the chicken stock and maybe some bouillon with the water. If I use that to make chicken stock, I added quite a bit more liquid, maybe about 4 more cups, because that's just how I preferred it. And now I'm cutting up just some cilantro and onions for toppings, and this queso fresco is a nice crumbly cheese to add on top. And I made up some tortillas. I just heated up some corn tortillas. You can use flour if you'd like, or chips or tostada shells. And I'm putting my soup in the bowl there, and I'm adding some cilantro and onions, and you'll see me add some of this salsa, which is so good. I love green salsa. It's one of my favorites. So I could just snack on this with some chips. And you can see how much that made in the blender. It filled up a whole bowl full. If you don't want so much, you can always half that recipe. And there's some queso fresco on the top. And this was so delicious and so comforting. It really reminds me of something my grandma used to make, and I really love it. And so I hope that you enjoy it as much as we did, because it's really, really good. And thanks so much for watching, friends. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future What's for Dinner videos. And I hope you all have an amazing week.